Hey everybody, today I am out in Nashville finally driving the all-new 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe. For this model year, it's gone big, it's gone boxy, and it has a third row in the back, which means Hyundai now has two three-row SUVs. So in this video, Tommy from TFL and I are going to tell you why you might want to get a Santa Fe over a Palisade, or why you might still want to check out that Palisade. So everybody wave hello to Tommy over there. Let's talk about the design first. What do you think about the boxy looks?
You know, Alex, I absolutely love the proportions of this vehicle. It's like they threw away the old design completely and said, we're gonna go in a completely new direction.
Yeah, I love boxy SUVs, and that's probably why I like what's going on here with the Santa Fe, because it's not just boxy up front, it's boxy around the side, and then there are lots of cool little touches, lots of H's everywhere. I was kind of surprised by how many H's in the lights. H's down here in this body-colored section, basically spanning all the way across. Of course, active grille shutters right there, front camera for that 360-degree camera setup, and then big light bars.
And the XRT gets some additional venting below the grille here to aid with some cooling for that higher towing capacity. And the side profile, Alex, is my favorite angle of this vehicle because it's very uniform in its boxiness. It's very angular all the way through.
And the boxiness really adds a lot of practicality that we don't find in all of the competition, but this is not as big as I thought it would be. Just in person, I mean, just stand right there next to it. You're what, 6 foot tall, 6'1", something like that?
Exactly, yep, 6 feet tall.
Yeah, so, you know, it's definitely boxy, but not quite as tall as some folks had expected. Now, what do you think about this little grab handle here? I find it a little bit odd because it doesn't close itself. You have to manually close it. So I foresee lots of people driving around in that position and then leaves and acorns falling in there.
Well, and with its position, you know, if this vehicle, like you mentioned, Alex, was 2-3 feet taller, you might really need that to get up on the roof. But as this vehicle sits, especially with this wheel tire setup, it doesn't aid that much into actually putting stuff up here.
Yeah, not for you and not for me necessarily. I still guess I could use it if I really was gonna carry a lot of stuff on top. But it just seems like an interesting little design touch without, you know, an answer in search of a question.
Now, Alex, what do you think of probably the most controversial portion of this design, which are these low-mounted taillights?
Well, funny you should ask about that. It definitely gives the Santa Fe sort of a low-waisted look. That's actually the only thing I don't like about the Santa Fe, let me put it this way. I think that they should have been kind of either here in the middle where we find the Santa Fe spelled out there, or just above it. Open up that hatch and let's see the repeaters, because those actually move with the hatch, which is why we have this second line of lights down there. I do think that was really well executed because those are full LEDs also, kind of a nice touch rather than incandescents. That does allow us to have this really big and vertical hatch opening.
Yeah, and what's great about this is it's a significantly wider opening than the previous generation. You also get quite a bit of height that extends almost the entire width of the vehicle. So if you have wider items, getting them in the back should be nice and easy.
And you got lots of headroom here. Stand under that hatch again, because that's a nice thing. You know, there's actually a little bit of clearance there for taller people. Check out how vertical this opening really is here. Just goes practically straight down there. They said this is nearly 6 inches wider than the outgoing Santa Fe's storage area in the back. A lot of folks, if you're shopping for a Palisade, this may be a little bit more convenient for camping, for larger bags, etc. in the rear. Although you are going to find more total storage in that Palisade because it is definitely longer than this.
One item from the design standpoint, Alex, I really appreciate is the functional exhaust tip. So there is only one. Some of the trends now are to go to the dual, but at least it is a real functional tip.
Yep, it definitely is. We have a little bit of piano black down there, not my favorite, because that will probably scratch up a little easily over time. I just really love the elegant proportions that we find all the way around the Santa Fe. It looks really, really good. Now, dimensionally, this is a lot closer to something like a Toyota Highlander than the new Grand Highlander. It's certainly a lot smaller than the upcoming Chevy, GMC, Buick SUVs, etc. that we're going to see soon.
And Alex, there's definitely a little bit of Defender going on here.
Oh yeah, a whole lot.
Maybe some G-Wagon toward the rear, but does this vehicle back up that look in terms of off-road capability?
It does not quite. They did say that if you get the XRT version of this, you're going to get better approach, breakover, and departure angles than a Subaru Outback, but not quite as good as a Honda Passport.
And if you don't get the XRT like this calligraphy, you have right around 7 inches of ground clearance. So yes, you do have SUV levels of ground clearance, but certainly not off-road levels of ground clearance.
Yeah, they were pretty clear that this is not designed to tackle the Rubicon or anything like that, but this is supposed to take you a little further down the trail so you can go camping in your vehicle. Certainly backed up, I would say, by the interior space that we have back here. The 3-row seating, that's going to be standard in all models. Interestingly, only this calligraphy trim is going to get the captain's chairs here in the second row. Oh. Lots of headroom there thanks to that ceiling. That's actually probably the biggest thing that I noticed in here is that just how much room we have.
Really spacious. You know, and Hyundai will tell you they designed it like a box because that's what carries the most amount of space. And certainly it does do that. Let me turn off the audio here, Alex. Cancel that blinker as well. There you go.
Oh, we have the powered seats there. Look at that powered seat going on.
Power fold there.
Power fold in the second row, but not power fold in the third row. I'll hand you the camera so we can check out this third row room together here. This is the big benefit, actually. There's more third row headroom back here than in the Palisade, but not as much legroom. Let me just go ahead and have that seat power back here. So you're gonna find more legroom and more cargo room technically in the Palisade, which is why a lot of folks have assumed that the Palisade may either grow this next generation or they're gonna try and do something else with it. I wouldn't be surprised if it grew. Now, I am surprised the seat did not go all the way back in its tracks when I pressed that button. Let's see if we can figure this out together here.
See if I can
see if you can crush me.
What's going on, Alex?
Oh, is it manual?
It's got electronic up and down. You
oh
see
yeah,
that?
an electronic, yeah.
Recline, but is it a manual forward and aft?
Manual. Oh, it is a manual slide. Look at that.
Oh, interesting.
And with it manually slid back, my knees are definitely touching this seat back. So that's kind of how much room we have. And then of course back there in the cargo area, you will find maybe about 2/3 the cargo room that we'd find in a Palisade. So definitely a little bit less. I appreciate the attention to detail in this calligraphy trim though. We get the faux suede pillars all the way back here for the third row passengers. Still hard plastic cup holders though and armrests. Air vents back here in the third row. And this huge pane of glass, you know, for you there in the second row, obviously not for me, but they still curved up the ceiling a little bit so that way I still have that extra headroom there.
And Alex, did you see this little treat over here? We also have AC controls.
Yeah, look at that
row.
back there. Actually a little vent control back there. That's kind of a nice touch. So, you know, if you have a pet, if you have dogs, etc., I think this is going to be a great option because this will still work when the third row is folded. So you've got a lot of room. You could have your pets back here, have the air conditioning on for them. And, you know, if you have a cat that needs a heated bed, hey, over here we have 150 watt AC outlets. So, you know, you can plug Kitty's bed in.
And Alex, Sarah, I'll take the camera from you. One other cool thing which they really emphasized is the attention to storage. So we've got this interesting bifold center console. Do you want to demonstrate that?
Let's move this chair back so I can do that. There we go. And then, interestingly, again, that manual power combo there. So let's see the storage area here. We have a pull-out drawer. Definitely nice and deep. You can put large items in there. And then you can open the center console storage area from the back or from the front. So you have access to all that storage there. The captain's chairs in the middle here, they do have armrests and they ratchet. Kind of a nice touch there. And an easy walk through towards the rear. I am surprised though that this is carpet without a floor mat because that's going to get a little bit mucky if you have kids with dirty shoes. Nice, easy to attach latch anchors, I will say, here in the second row. So that's kind of a nice touch as well. Although you can't leave a child seat latch anchor into place and tilt slide those seats forward. What do you think of the USB-C ports here on the seat back? I kind of just wonder how easy that's going to be to hit it accidentally and break off that USB port.
Well, it's definitely a trend within this manufacturer, right? We're seeing a lot of Hyundai products incorporate that. But what's interesting about the Santa Fe, lots of attention to detail specific to the model, like that H pattern.
Yeah, and even over here on the air vent. The pillar air vent has an H pattern in it. That's cool.
And then you got the grocery hooks located in the back of the front seats.
Sunshades up there on the second row doors, and really nice materials, I do have to say. Like the upper section of the rear door, that's a soft touch injection molded material. Same faux wood trim that we find up front there. And the camera's not doing this color justice, but this is sort of a dark olive green as far as the color of the plastics here. And then we have this sort of ivory seat. I wasn't sure how I would feel about that until I saw it in person. Then I was like, wow, I kind of really like that. It's just something different.
Yeah, and then also lots of places to put cups, right?
Yeah, cup holders there on the door. This is my least favorite location for cups for rear seat passengers, though, because your kid's going to have a soda in there, and then they're going to close the door, and guess where the soda goes when the door's closed? It goes all over everywhere in here. But, you know, here, center console again, lots of storage there. 2 Qi wireless charging mats. I was surprised about that. This one has the NFC capability there for the phone as key thing. And I will say one word about that. The phone as key technology in this vehicle is different than what we find in a Rivian or a Tesla because it uses the wideband NFC protocol that's built into certain Google phones and iPhones for quite some time. And that means it will work just like the smart key. As you approach the vehicle, it will just unlock this one door because it knows where around the vehicle it is, just like the regular key. So you approach the car, someone hiding behind the car can't open the door on that side because your phone's over here, kind of a thing. And it'll work apparently even when the battery is dead for some short period of time. Now the downside to that is the Hyundai key that I don't think you are a fan of either, right?
Yeah, the little egg key, Alex, my big concern with it is long-term longevity because it does seem to scratch fairly easily.
Yeah, every Hyundai vehicle that we've had at home for a week that's had, you know, maybe 1,000 miles on it, it's kind of scratched up. So the one good thing, of course, is you don't need the key. You can just use your phone. And then we have a fingerprint reader over here that helps you do a whole bunch of different vehicle things, like turn off the valet mode and find out what the valet was doing. You can also use it to adjust your personal settings to the vehicle. This steering wheel, this is the most Land Rover thing to me in this interior.
Alex, so one thing which I think is really interesting is it's a two-tone design with kind of that olive green along the edge, and then we've got that beige finish along the front with the 4 dots, which is the Morse code for H there across the center.
Yeah, I think it's a really elegant look. I really like the fact that Hyundai is not just using the same steering wheel in everything. They are switching it up a bit, giving each vehicle a little bit more of a personality, but then we do have some common elements. So if you have multiple Hyundais in the house, you're going to know exactly how you use your radar controls and your infotainment controls because they're very common vehicle to vehicle, but the design of the steering wheel is a little bit different, just adding that extra personality. And then we have the shifter also borrowed out of the Hyundai Ioniq lineup right there. Park button right out there on the side. What do you think about that column shifter? I kind of dig it.
I really enjoy that location, Alex, because it's nice tucked out of the way, but you still get a very tactile feel and a very distinctive, you know, idea of which direction the vehicle is going to be going based on which way you twist it.
Yeah, it's like, I like this one. I like the Mercedes, you know, one on the side. I think those are both really good implementations. We finally have wireless Apple CarPlay for the big screen up there. That's thanks to the new hardware and new software in the system. We don't have a phone connected to it just yet. So yeah, nice big touch screen. Apple CarPlay uses the entire screen, which is also a nice touch, and then it gets the latest software from the rest of the Hyundai lineup with integrated apps like weather, things like that. It is a bit more responsive than previous generations of the software, and I think still pretty intuitive as far as its functionality goes.
Yeah, and of course you've got the dual screen display as well as that 12-inch heads-up display up there as well.
Yeah, this display of course has some selectable themes, but all the themes are a little bit more minimalist than we've seen from Hyundai in the past. It's very similar to what we saw in the Kona the last time we drove that. Now fortunately we do have some physical controls for the infotainment system going back here to the center console, so we have, you know, home map, things like that, but the climate control, that is on a new touchscreen bank in the middle.
Yeah, and we still have physical dials to control the dual zone automatic climate control, but controls such as your heated steering wheel,
yeah, that takes a while.
It's a little bit of a push.
You have to really want it. You got to want that option there. I do like the fact that this is not that dual function display that we find in some Kia models. Thankfully, they don't have that one. I just kind of wonder, you know, why didn't we just get some regular push buttons there like we found in the last Santa Fe?
Yeah,
then coming below that, we have the drive mode toggle, auto brake hold, things like that, and then the USB ports in this tray. And this is one way you'll know that the big screen in your Hyundai has wireless CarPlay is if you have this little button right here, because it makes this USB-C port either be a charge-only port or charge and USB. Kind of a interesting thing there. And then over here, we have the UVC button because we have a UV stabilizer thing there, so that way when your key gets gross, you can just put it in there and then it will UV sanitize your key. I think that's a little bit gimmicky to me, but you know, it's kind of cool for people that are maybe interested in that sort of thing.
And you know, they made a big deal, Alex, that this vehicle started development under COVID.
Yes.
And this is very much a
that makes
COVID-era feature.
That makes sense. Well, we're over here, we should say, like, this is a soft touch plastic, but this is faux stitching. It's not actually holding anything together, but I think it's really elegantly done. I would actually say that applies to everything here. Again, faux stitching on this soft touch injection molded upper, but Really nicely done. Do you like the fake wood here?
You know, Alex, I usually am not a fan of faux wood, but in this application, it looks pretty good.
Check out the glove box over there on your side. Let me grab the camera from you so you can Vanna White our glove compartment.
We have a little shelf above, actually a surprisingly deep shelf. This is an iPhone, and it'll
wow,
eat that quite nicely. And then the glove box hinges down, and a decent size. We've got our owner's manual in there and all the important documents that you'll find.
You'd be able to fit an iPad in there, I think.
And what about this? Yeah,
more storage there under that center console.
Yep.
Lots of storage for all of your goodies. I have to come back though and go like, I just am really shocked that we have 2 wireless chargers finally, because that's something I know a lot of customers have been asking for. And outside of some Teslas and some Rivians that actually, does Rivian even do 2? My memory is bad there. Very few vehicles though have 2.
And what I love about this, Alex, I'm going to move your phone really quickly. If you have a phone case like mine that has a pretty big bump for the cameras, the cheap pad is actually elevated, so there's a space for your camera to actually poke through the bottom there.
Yeah, it also helps with cooling, they said, so helps keep your phone nice and chilly.
Yeah, and then moving a little further back here, we've got the dual cup holder setup, and they've got these pretty aggressive teeth, so even if you have some of the narrower hands, they do a good job of, well, they do an okay job of holding smaller items in place.
But big gulps shouldn't be a problem at all there.
And then there's that bifold console that you pointed out earlier, and the little divider does come out, so if you want even more space there, you can do that. Now, Alex, one thing which is a little interesting is the sunroof configuration. So from the front seat driver and passenger perspective, it really is just a standard normal size sunroof. There's no full glass roof.
Nope. But we do get the absolutely enormous one back there over that second row area. It really makes the interior feel spacious, but not quite as spacious as one big roof would look. I'm wondering if that was just a structural integrity thing, the need to have this area be pillar and roof support, because they want this to be more of an adventurous-y vehicle with some stuff up there on the roof.
And if you do have kids, I might avoid this headliner, because as premium as it is, start playing with it, you're going to get some pretty interesting patterns and designs poking through there.
Yeah, you definitely could. Now the upholstery in here, I think it's an attractive look. Let me just move over here to my seat. Again, more H's there, perforated because these seats are both heated and ventilated. And I do kind of like this sort of baseball glove stitch kind of going on there. Yeah. It's a really attractive design. Nice and supportive as well. The bolsters are pretty decent here.
They feel great. And Alex, one thing which I think is interesting about the Santa Fe is you can get it in cloth, leatherette, leather, and the Napa leather configuration.
Now let's talk about what's under the hood and what's not under the hood. Big news for this generation, no plug-in hybrid in North America. The plug-in hybrid will continue in other markets. The base engine is going to be this one, 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine producing 277 horsepower, mated to a wet dual clutch transmission, or you can get the same 1.6-liter turbocharged hybrid that we find in a wide variety of other Hyundai and Kia products. That's going to give you 231 horsepower total, and it uses a regular 6-speed automatic transmission. So if you like the feel of a regular automatic, the way that it shifts, the way you can make it shift, then you want to get this hybrid. If you prefer more of that CVT EV feel, you might want to check out the Highlander. But fuel economy, pretty comparable, surprisingly. 36 miles per gallon if you choose the hybrid front-wheel drive. You lose 2 miles per gallon if you choose all-wheel drive, because it has a real mechanical all-wheel drive system, not an e-axle like we find in some other vehicles.
Now, Alex, one thing which I think is interesting is the boxy squared-off design, the off-roady nature, kind of make you want to think that this is a longitudinal setup for the engine. Maybe there's a transfer case in there, and even the engine cover looks longitudinal, but if you pull that back...
Let's pull that off.
Transverse.
Yep. And, that makes sense in this segment because, they wanted it to look that bold, that off-roady kind of vibe. They wanted to give it that. But, of course, they wanted to give it 36 miles per gallon as well. And Hyundai does not have a rear-wheel drive hybrid system yet. We will probably find one soon in a Genesis, though, if you want something along those lines.
Alex, I do have to say, considering the boxy profile, pretty decent fuel economy rating.
Yeah, fuel economy is pretty good. Obviously, it's going to be lower in this. You could get as low as 22 miles per gallon out of the 2.5-liter turbo if you get the XRT, or as high as around 24 miles per gallon. But I think that when we look at some of the details up front, it's pretty easy to see why. We get the active aero shutters there, and there's really been a lot of dedication to aerodynamics, even though this is big and boxy, like the little air curtain inlets over here on the side. Those are actually functional, helps relieve pressure up front, guide it around the vehicle. And not only does it improve the coefficient of drag for the vehicle just in this frontal area, it actually helps smooth the airflow around to the side that makes it a bit more efficient on the highway as well. All right, it's time to get the Santa Fe out on the road. Let's talk about performance first. In our preliminary 0 to 60 numbers, which are not at home, mind you, not on our usual test surface, and obviously I have one extra person in the car, it was 6.8 seconds approximately, right?
Feels pretty on the money, Alex. This engine delivers a nice wide range of torque. From even the lower RPMs, you don't experience a lot of turbo lag.
And it is considerably smoother and quieter than the 2.4 in the Highlander. That's probably the first thing I noticed, actually. There are certainly times in the Highlander where it sounds just a little too unrefined, a little too gruff. This one, it's unmistakably four-cylinder, but it's certainly a little bit smoother, I would say.
And the great thing about having that DCT transmission is downshifts are immediate.
Oh yeah.
And always right in that torque and power band. So you know that when you go to hit that accelerator, you're gonna have a nice push from the car regardless of where you're at.
I will say that is definitely one nice thing about the DCT. So if we, come around this corner, assuming the light might be green over there, it is green, so we can just get that instant torque right there. But we should talk about the downside since it is a DCT, of course. If you spend a lot of time in stop and go or slow and go traffic, even though this has a wet clutch, it's not going to be as smooth as a regular auto.
It is a lot better than the 8-speed dual clutch they use with a dry clutch, especially in like some of the 1.6 turbo applications. They were pretty herky-jerky from a slow speed. This is better than that, but yeah, it is a consideration.
Yeah, so if I slow down here, and you want to speed up a little bit, and then you decide, no, that's not what I want, there's going to be this moment of manual transmission feel, because of course it doesn't have a torque converter. So you're going to get that same sort of head jerking motion if you're pulling off the throttle really quick at certain speeds. I think they've done a really good job programming that really instant clutch release, but it still can happen here and there, and that may offend some people.
Now, one thing I'm noticing from the passenger seat, Alex, is the body controls feel really good. So we've got some nice twisty roads here in Tennessee. It's not wallowing, it's not floating, but it's also a nice balance of firmness with comfort.
I think they found a pretty decent balance there, and it's also helped by the fact that the Santa Fe, again, is not as big as some people might think. If you look at photos of this, you think, oh my goodness, that's the size of a Tahoe or a Suburban, but it's honestly not. It actually feels a lot smaller on the road than you might think. The cabin obviously is not as wide as some of the competition either, so it's a little bit smaller, tidier in every dimension. That does make it a bit more fun to drive.
And one thing which is cool about this vehicle is you get that off-roady look of a G-Wagon or a Defender, but you get much better on-road dynamics.
That's totally true. If it's a nice squishy dashboard, sometimes to add extra stability. Oh, is it caught on my... Oh no. No, it's caught on my... Oh no. Now I feel dumb.
Want to pull over?
Yes.
We'll fix it.
It's caught on my suction cup. No. I pulled the wrong lever. Look at me. Kudos for Hyundai for having a please don't damage my wiper motor mode.
That's good.
Pardon everybody. There we go.
So Alex, this calligraphy model is rolling on a set of 21-inch wheels. The base SE is rolling on a set of 18s. So you've got a pretty wide range of wheel size. And then interestingly, this vehicle is on Pirellis, which is a little bit unusual for Hyundai.
I was surprised by the Pirelli tire choice. I like it. I think that this particular tire fits the on-road personality of this really well. It has a surprising amount of grip. Some Hyundai models have not really done that well when it comes to tire grip on the road. Definitely some of the hand-cooked tires that they've used in other models. They tend to squeal a little early, makes the handling really predictable, but also a little bit lower than some. And I think that they found a really good balance, but still definitely an on-road balance so far. We haven't driven the XRT yet, mind you.
Yeah, but overall, from a on-road drivability standpoint, it's really quiet. We're cruising around here, 45, 50, 55 miles an hour. Not a lot of cabin intrusion. Steering, is it fine?
Steering's fine. I mean, it feels very similar to the outgoing Santa Fe, I would say, as far as the steering. Not a lot of feedback, obviously, coming from the front. Electric power steering, of course. It feels predictable. The number of turns lock to lock is about the same as everything else. So the on-road feel is very consistent with the rest of the Hyundai lineup. I will say that the body motion, again, is really well controlled. So the rear suspension doesn't become upset over broken pavement. We were on some country roads earlier. Felt just fine there. Some older Hyundai products, maybe from about 10 years ago, would not have held up so well in those situations. So Hyundai's this kind of car company that continually refines their products. That's something that I really appreciate. They don't just stick with the formula that they've been comfortable with. They're not opposed to thinking outside the box and bringing in experts to try and help improve things. And that influx of German talent that they had about a decade ago has really helped dial in all of the control motions on the vehicle. So, you know, suspension tuning, handling ability, etc., the amount of grip that you get, everything has really notched up. Now let's take a look at the XRT trim. If you want to go a little further off the beaten path, you might want to choose this trim of your Santa Fe. In addition to that skid plate down there, which is the first time we've had a functional one on an XRT model, we have an additional cooling duct right there just above the active shutters that allows this to have a higher cooling fan capacity so it can tow 4,500 pounds in addition to being a little bit more rugged off-road. Then of course we have the Continental all-terrain tires. These are a 245 60R18, so instead of the 21-inch wheels we had on the other model, these are a little bit smaller wheels, so we can have a little bit more sidewall there and a little bit more rugged capability. This is of course the one that we're going to drive on this trail now. You can see it's nicely muddied up, but let's see how it is actually on the trail.
So we got this little articulated trench here, and we're going to see if Alex can clear that. All right, Alex, we're going to have you stop at the worst part.
There we go. Right here we got two wheels up in the air. We can seesaw it a little bit. See? That's kind of fun. Obviously we have that sort of manual transmission-like feel where you're definitely rolling back a bit. You get that little, you know, need to dig a little deeper to get that traction and send it where it needs to go. But, you know, for a brake-based system, it does that relatively well. I would say not quite as well as a Passport with that mechanical, you know, limited slip functionality in the rear, but pretty decent. Now let's see how the dual clutch transmission handles this steeper section here, because that has been a challenge for DCTs. Now, as we're coming up this hill, trying to take it really slow here, we're going 3 miles an hour. I'll slow this down to maybe 2 miles an hour. You know, the DCT does a reasonable job thanks to that wet clutch, but if I were to stop and then floor it, this is all we get from floored, because of course we don't have that torque converter. So we don't have the ability to stop and really build up pressure in that torque converter and continue. If I stop it here and I floor it, you get just a tiny bit more, but you still have that slight little bit of rolling backwards as you'd expect in a DCT just due to its design. So that's something to keep in mind. If you are planning on taking your XRT on something a bit more technical, keep in mind the limitations of a lack of torque converter would have.
Alex, one thing I'm noticing is that with these 18-inch wheels and that kind of fatter sidewall, the ride is pretty good down this kind of rutted 2-track.
Yeah, I think it actually works well. I think that also goes just along with the rest of the suspension tuning that we find in the Santa Fe, where they struck a pretty decent balance between the various needs that people might have for this vehicle. Obviously, if you're going to be traveling on a road with this kind of terrain, you're going to want that extra beefy sidewall. Let's see what our tire pressure is set to. Still set to 36 PSI. So, yeah, actually a pretty decent ride. It's not even aired down. I would have thought actually they would have aired down this for this trail, but they didn't.
And Alex, a couple other things. We got our downhill assist here.
Let's give that a try. Downhill brake control is on. That's not bad, you know.
Slowing you down a little bit so you can have your foot off the brake. And then here we have the 4-wheel drive lock, which will do its best to kind of lock up that power takeoff unit and do a more of a 50-50 split front to back. But it won't allow it to kind of bind up, right, Alex?
Yeah, it's not an aggressive lock. And actually, versus some Hyundai products in the past, it's a lot less of an aggressive lock than we've seen before from them. And they tune it to steering angle and some other sensors on the vehicle. So if your wheel's cranked, it's really going to dial that lock back so that way you can slip a bit. You don't get that crabbing feeling when you're off-roading like you would in a more traditional SUV like a Grand Cherokee if it was in 4-low, something like that. And of course, we don't have any low ratio mode at all.
Right, no low range. And if this is a vehicle you're looking to go exploring with on weekends, this is about all I would want to take it on. Maybe some 2-track, some forest roads. If you're going to be in a situation where you're really using that skid plate regularly, you're probably in a situation where you want a low range and some more protection in the rear. So I'm not sure I would want to take it on that kind of terrain, but on this it does okay.
Yeah, I think the skid plate's just there to give people a little extra peace of mind. You know, if you're out there in the national park and there's a bigger rock in the road that you don't notice, you're going to get less damage, you know, obviously with the skid plate there, but you can tell by its general design that it doesn't have the same design capacity as, say, a skid plate on a Trailhawk would, or a Wrangler or a Bronco or a Defender or anything like that. Those have much beefier skid plates, and the bolts are certainly more recessed up in there. One thing that I noticed is that the two front front-mounted bolts on this skid plate are relatively close to the surface, so those are going to wear over time, and it means that if you do need to replace your skid plate or remove it, and you have been bashing it against rocks, you know, it may be kind of tricky to remove that bolt because it might not have much of a head anymore.
Now, I was looking at one of the other XRTs, which was spec pretty similar down at the base. That was about 42675 was the sticker on that one. We are missing a bunch of stuff compared to the calligraphy we were in earlier. We don't have that little sanitizing feature. We only have one wireless charger.
Yep, only one wireless charger.
Only one wireless charger. We don't have that full digital instrument cluster.
Yeah, we have this interesting combination LCD right there in the middle, and then the two LED rings on either side. I think the look does a decent job imitating the look of the LCD, the full LCD, but I kind of wish they'd been physical dials somehow here. Oh, we should stop and press our downhill control button, but instead I'm going to be rebellious and I'm going to turn downhill control off, and we'll see how the anti-lock brakes work.
What a rebel.
So how much is the new Santa Fe going to cost you? Well, it starts at $33,950. If you want the hybrid, and I think most of you are going to want that, that's $36,950. And this model, as fully equipped here, the Calligraphy Edition, non-hybrid, this one's nearly $51,000, including the destination charge. How do you feel about that pricing lineup, Tommy?
You know, Alex, especially the base price, that's gone up pretty considerably over the previous generation. However, I do argue you get a more premium experience and definitely a more premium design.
I agree. You know, you're definitely going to pay for the added style of the Santa Fe versus some of the competition. If you're shopping something like a Sorento, I think that this is going to be a better deal because we have all the extra room in the back. They're wanting also people to compare this against some two-row entries. So the Outback was definitely mentioned. The Passport was mentioned as well. The Honda Passport does get fairly expensive. The Outback is a pretty decent deal, though, I have to say, but this is going to be significantly roomier inside. Even if you never plan on using that third row, I think the fact that it's back there, A, is very handy because it's that emergency use third row, but just B, you get 40 some odd cubic feet of storage space back there. That's perhaps the one thing we forgot to touch on is the storage space. So we get about 15 cubic feet behind the third row, over 40 cubic feet behind the second row. That puts the second row really in league with those big boxy two-row options like the Passport, ahead of something like the Grand Cherokee, etc. So lots of roominess in the back. Now, what do you think about this versus a Highlander? That was another one they mentioned.
Yeah, interesting comparison. I think I like some of the feature set in the Hyundai a little bit more. I do like that 2.5 turbo engine, although Toyota now offers a 2.4 turbo in the Highlander.
Yep.
And you know, I think you're spot on the money, Alex. So the Santa Fe to buy really is going to be that new hybrid configuration.
And that is like an interesting point because like the fuel economy is pretty similar to the Highlander hybrid fuel economy. This is going to have a more traditional feel since it has a 6-speed automatic transmission with the 1.6-liter turbo in its hybrid drivetrain. It, of course, has a mechanical all-wheel drive system available, so it's going to feel more sure-footed, more normative on slippery surfaces like snow or ice or mud, etc. And the e-all-wheel drive system in the Highlander may be a little bit funky there, but that e-all-wheel drive system is very fuel efficient and it's incredibly reliable. Then on the other side, we have the turbo versus the turbo. The turbo in the Highlander has a regular automatic. This has the wet dual clutch transmission, which I'm a little bit more of a fan of than you are, I think.
You're right, Alex. I think especially in a vehicle like this that's trying to be a little bit more adventure-y, slow speed power delivery, especially off-road, is just not going to be as good in the Hyundai compared to the Toyota.
Yeah, it's just not going to be as smooth. And you guys have had some overheating issues, as I recall, on some off-road tests in vehicles that have used this same transmission.
Well, the wet clutch is better than the previous gen dry that they used to use. But even still, from a longevity standpoint, I feel a little bit more comfortable hitting the dirt with a torque converter.
Yeah. This one is going to give you better fuel economy, and for the average person that's doing city, commuting, highway driving on road trips, etc., it is going to be more fuel efficient because of its design, but there are definitely some pros and cons to each of the systems that are at work here. Bottom line though, I think if you're shopping in this segment and you're interested in something with extra style, definitely take a look at the Santa Fe. There are absolutely no issues, no red flags for me as far as the design of the hybrid system or the non-hybrid system is concerned. I think a lot of folks would actually do better in this than a number of the options that we've already mentioned simply because of that big boxy cargo area in the back and the fact that a lot of people just want the extra room, and this is giving them that at a lower acquisition price than some of the competition, depending on exactly what you want to consider as competition, of course.
But you have to give Hyundai props for being bold. Whether or not you like the design or not, It's a very bold statement.
And for me, the only thing just really is the positioning of the lights. I know that a lot of folks are asking, are they too low? Will you see it if this is in front of you? Are you gonna see those lights? I don't think that's a problem. I mean, we saw a bunch of them in the parking lot. We drove behind some of them. It's not really an issue unless you're absolutely right on the bumper of the vehicle in front of you. And then, then you're not driving right anyway. So you should just be a little further away. But I think actually it works with the design and it is bold. Not quite my preference, but it's certainly bold.
And Alex, one more thing we should mention, the standard Santa Fe is going to have a 3,500 pound towing capacity. If you step up to the XRT, that's going to raise that capacity to 4,500.
Yeah, so it's actually a reasonable amount of towing capability, especially compared to something like the Outback, but obviously something like a Grand Cherokee, that's going to tow more. Also, the Honda Passport could tow a little bit more depending on how you have the vehicles equipped. So bottom line, if you want one of these, I think it's a great option. Be sure and head over to your Hyundai dealer because these are already on sale and the hybrid model will be on sale shortly. If you want a hybrid, apparently up to about half of these sold in North America will be the hybrid. Be sure and reach out to your dealer so you can be one of the first to get that hybrid system. It's essentially the same hybrid system we find in a wide variety of Hyundai and Kia products, so I have absolutely no worries about the hybrid system if you want to be one of the first people to get it. So be sure to do that. Head down there to the comment section. Let us know what you think about the design, especially this little handle and the tail lights, the two most controversial elements on the vehicle. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Find us over at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. And Tommy, where can they find you?
TFLcar.com or alltfl.com. And Alex, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
See everybody later.